I'm Dave Finocchio, founder of the Cool Down and Bleacher Report. And I'm panicked that I'm going to sneeze as much on this podcast as Howard did on our bus in Ireland.
What's up? Not much. So we're in our padded room. Sound is fantastic. It's good to be back. We are in October-ish 2022. The VIX is 400. The Dow is at 40, down from 40,000. Your rubles, your big ruble trade is working. My U.S. dollar trade is working. The world's gone to hell in a handbasket. And because the markets are in turmoil, we're going to completely not talk about them today. Because we had Jim on last week, and how good was Jim?
Oh, fantastic.
So you can't top Jim.
No.
So we have to completely go in the opposite direction for someone insane and smart, but someone who probably doesn't care about the market because he is focused on building a new startup.
You meant insanely smart, right?
Insanely smart and thin. He has a 32 waist. Huh. Take any guess.
I had that at
I say 32 waist, and you go, well, it's none of your friends. It's nobody over 40. So I was golfing with my friend Greg Bettinelli, who is actually an investor in this company, which immediately made me sus. But Dave, our guest, overcame that on a long bus ride. But I've lost my point already. But we were I was on a mancation, a adventurecation for a month. And Dave, who was, he will tell you this, but you know how people look at me, Canute. They meet me, I look terrible, I never smile, and immediately people size me up and go, not going to be friends with this guy for 6 days golfing. And then by the end of a stay with Howie, people go, I miss him.
Huh.
Do you find that true?
Somehow that you warmed your way into their hearts.
Well, that's the way I perceive it. I don't know. It's kind of like Larry David. I don't know this, but that's how I walk away from after I spend 8 days with people. I can't wait for my phone to ring because people miss me.
Well, I think you should continue believing that.
Yeah, Dave has not called me, but he has followed me on Twitter, so we're halfway there. So my guest today is Dave Finocchio. That is his real name. I think he spells it like Pinocchio. I think his parents are comedians, maybe, or Irish. But like I said, this kid is unbelievable. He started the Bleacher Report back when interns were slaves and you could have slave labor. We can talk about that later because that's how the world worked back in 2000 and under George Bush, whatever, the GB Jr., whatever you called the guy. And sold that, was acquired. Sorry, I don't like saying the word. So the company was wanted and acquired. Every kid today sees Bleacher Report when they're watching sports. Was acquired in 2012 for north of $200 million. So he's got some cash, enough to afford Bonobos size 32 pants, golf pants, Canute, and a hell of a golf swing. So we're going to talk about that too. But anyways, sold that, been advising, knows sports inside out, meaning he's 39, I'm 57. He knows more about the Blue Jays 90s team, I was on a bus ride with them, than I know, and I was a super fan back at that time.
Huh.
So obviously, as someone who started the Bleacher Report, he knows a lot about sports, loves sports. He's the encyclopedia. He's Finocchiopedia, I was calling him, Finocchiopedia on sports. Anyways, super interesting because I know you and I have talked about this, Canute. I'm fascinated by what's happening in this market because new trends are emerging. And I am constantly in search of new trends. And part of my concern as a 57-year-old white, chubby male, size 34 waist, that I don't know what's going on out there. And sure enough, we're sitting on the bus, and I'm like, what are you working on, Dave? Dave F. for this podcast. And Dave F. goes, I'm working on a product called the Cool Down. He's got a new startup. And I go, what's the Cool Down? And I don't want to butcher it, but it's fascinating. Because he's taking everything that he's learned in sports and media over the years and applying it to climate change. And
interesting.
So Exactly. What I said, who could be less interested in climate change than Howard? And by the end of the conversation, I was like, oh my God, this is genius. And so I invited him on the podcast. So these are my first Irish trip guests. We've had Greg on the show, Bettinelli, but I immediately pinged Dave. And I said, Dave, you know what? Can you come talk about the cool down? And he said, yes. So let's get Dave on. By the way, Knut, is everything okay with you?
Absolutely great.
Your hair looks good.
Not bad.
Not a runny nose. You have no cough. Your eyes not twitching. What, you fixed yourself up. You've had a rough year. So, but everything's okay. Kids are good?
All good.
All right. So let's get Dave on the phone. Dave.
Howard.
Thanks for...
So good to hear your voice.
Yeah. So what's your interpretation? You spent 8 days with Howie. You played one round with me. I don't know if that's because you lobbied against playing 2 or 3 with me. What's your interpretation after seeing the vulgarity and hilarity that is Howie?
Yeah, I did lobby, I guess fairly effectively, I guess. But no,
I had begged to play with you, by the way. So yes, you lobbied well.
Yeah. Well, you described the life cycle of getting to know you really well. I remember when I first got to know you, you were sitting down. And it did strike me that based on how you were speaking in a seat, I thought you would be shorter. So I do remember when you stood up, you ended up being taller than I sort of imagined you being. So that was a first impression. I remember that you sneezed literally the entire bus trip.
Yeah, I had COVID. I was so thrilled that no one else got it.
Yeah, we spent many hours. Did you actually have COVID?
No.
Okay.
But I was fighting a cold, and I didn't want anybody to know, but it sounds like my gig's up.
Yeah. I mean, based on your sneezing, it wouldn't have surprised me in the least. I think one morning I gave you the choice between Zyrtec, Claritin
D. Right. You saved me that day.
And I gave you some Dayquil as well.
You killed it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, by the end of the trip, one, you totally stopped me in my tracks a couple times with jokes where I had no response whatsoever. Because you're very witty, and 2, yeah, the last week and a half, I've just had a little bit of Howard withdrawal. It's you got me. By the end of it, I wanted to spend more time with you.
And I think the trick is, I appreciate that. The trick is, I'm trying not to bring other people down. So when I agree to do something, it's 100%. And I was sick. I had come up this crazy long trip and so many different weather things. And then you hit Ireland. I just can't believe people live there. And within 10 minutes, I was sick, right? Like there's 8 temperature changes in the first half hour in Ireland. And I was a sauna. I was cold. I was a windshield. So I was sick, but I fought through it. I thought, there's no one to complain to. So I asked you for some Zyrtec. You came through. And somehow it passed. It was I did a COVID check, no COVID. And I'm glad. I really struggled. What did you find the hardest thing? Because I think you had been to Ireland, or you hadn't.
No, it was my first time.
So what was your takeaway? Because would you go back, and did you enjoy it?
Yeah. I enjoyed the hell out of the whole trip. I thought the golf courses around Dublin that were in Ireland were good, but I probably wouldn't travel there again for them. But I thought the golf in Northern Ireland was spectacular. Like once we got to Royal County Down, and even Ardglass the day before. I remember Ardglass. You and I had plans to buy Ardglass for about 7 minutes.
Yeah. We were going to do an NFT, and then we realized no one has NFTs.
That's right. Yeah, nobody has NFTs, but our heart was in the right place on it. But I was like, the last 4 days of that trip, I was in heaven. Like, I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, it's like walking on the moon as a golfer, like the moon that is golf. If some people think the moon is cheese, we think it's a golf course. It was like walking a bit on the moon. I found that the LA guys really struggle. I don't know how, you can tell people what the weather's like, right? And you can tell them how to dress, and then they just won't do it. It's like, don't touch the fire. And they show up ill-prepared for the win. That was funny. Like, people just don't understand the conditions can be that bad to play golf. All right, so the cool down. You give me we'll go back in time to Bleacher Report because it's incredible. Like, it's fun to have built a brand, I imagine, because, I've been trying with StockTwits for 12 years that survives, not just survives, but also grows. So kudos. I mean, I'm always fascinated by that. But
thank you.
You're out of retirement or not retirement, but you're back in the game, and that's hard because it's not like you weren't successful, and you know what the grind is like, and you know that you don't want to go small because you wouldn't take outside money if you're going to go small. So what is the cool down and how did it start?
Yeah, so the cool down is our attempt to build the world's first mainstream climate brand, which I'll sort of back into. I left Bleacher Report in 2019. I ran the business for the better part of 14 years. As you mentioned, I spent a couple of years advising and investing. One of the things I did was I spent a lot of time with the founders of The Athletic and helped them get through to their sale to the New York Times, and so sort of kept a toe in the sports waters. But I sort of knew in my gut that I didn't want to do I didn't want to do the sports grind again. It was great, but just sort of hard for me to ever imagine that being as much fun doing it again as it was the first time. And I over the last probably 7 or 8 years, got really passionate about climate, probably because I lived in San Francisco and we started to have smoke in our lives, which if you haven't lived through it, if you're breathing smoke every day for weeks at a time, we were having kids also in a way that overlapped with that. So we had babies in a house that were breathing in smoke. And I sort of thought, shit, I sort of figured that a lot of these things would start to happen when I was old, or maybe when my kids were old, but this is happening now and it's impacting our lives. And the way I responded to it initially was just to learn as much as possible about the problem side of climate and then the solution side of climate. And I figured it would be a little bit boring, but I did want to sort of get up to speed on all of it just to be an educated person on the topic. And I ended up finding it to be like way more fascinating, the whole world, like way more interesting than I ever figured it would be. But then the next sort of step in my evolution was I realized kind of with a Bleacher Report lens that the content that's out there today, most of it is delivered and packaged to people in a way that is not resonating with them. Like it is boring to them, where it's written for intellectuals who subscribe to the New York Times. And it's not so much sort of for your sort of more average mainstream person in the US who's maybe noticing extreme weather, but the light bulb hasn't totally gone off yet about what's happening. And I think we're talking about, the transition of billions and eventually trillions of dollars that are going to be spent on certain types of lifestyles and on certain products that are more wasteful to other ways of doing things that are cleaner. And we're trying to build something to help people, figure out what's right for them and their families in that mix and ultimately accelerate some of the transitions. So that's the gist at a high level.
And are you the sole founder?
No, I've got 2 co-founders. It's too hard to do it on your own. I'm a big believer in some shared weight on these projects.
And by co-founder, is it equal, or a specific type of co-founder?
I have a co-founder named Anna Robertson who is running content for us. She was Diane Sawyer's producer very early in her career. Like she traveled around with Diane like in her early 20s all over the world, going after the world's biggest stories. And then Anna later built the video team at Yahoo and did a bunch of strategic stuff at Disney. And she's just a person who's really, really passionate about climate, had been doing a lot of work with National Geographic and with ABC News on sort of the meteorology side. So she and I connected, and I really needed to find a content person who was passionate about climate, but understood how to speak to mainstream audiences. One of the big problems in the climate space, I think, is there's sort of an echo chamber where like people who are climate converts mostly just talk to each other, and they don't really understand why nobody else is as incensed and has the same sense of urgency that they do. So we've got to figure out how to talk to other people. So she's very well versed in that. And then my other co-founder is a guy named Ryan Alberti, who was the first non-founder employee of Bleacher Report, and he's just a super badass operations guy. And actually, Ryan Ryan helped one of my Bleacher Report co-founders start Bustle, which is a media company focused on women's entertainment. And then afterwards, Ryan's always been a high-performing person. He was like the best student in the history of my high school, and then he played football at Princeton. But when he was 34, he went into the Army and got into Army Ranger School, and then spent 5 years as an Army Ranger and did tours in Afghanistan. And he's just he's wired differently than most of us. But I like having people around who are not just sort of talkers. Like if you're doing a startup, you need people who are going to walk the walk, and nobody walks the walk more than Ryan does. So yeah, we've got a really good leadership team with some interesting backgrounds.
Yeah, I like to tell people, like, we were in this kind of, and you were working at Bleacher Report through this and helping The Athletic, but we got a little soft. And it's never anybody's fault, right? It's not our fault that the iPhone exists. It's not our fault that kids have an iPhone. It's not their fault. I mean, it's not their fault that the Fed was easing for 20. Like, it is what it is. Your product or your environment. But great founders do stand out, and I think we've gone through this period where I've been quiet about investing just because things were so rushed. You had to make decisions in 10 minutes, and I don't know. I was starting to believe that maybe that's the way it's going to always get done. And then sure enough, the markets do their thing. And now we're back to where, oh my God, you realize that these are like 10 to 12 year projects. Nothing's changed. There are moments when things change, but nothing's really changed. It's going to take forever to build great companies. You did it 14 years at Bleacher Report. There's hardly any shortcuts. And therefore, you have to back people that just stand out. And you stood out to me. How did you decide you wanted to do another startup versus just backing other people because you were investing for a while?
Yeah, I did almost 30 deals over a couple of years with some partners. And I sort of did that just to see different stuff because I'd been so focused on sports for a long time. I don't know if other founders feel this way, but I felt like in the first half, even the first 10 years of my Bleacher Report career, I was a reasonably creative person, and I was a pretty good problem solver and innovator. In the last 3 years, especially, I felt like my brain was a little bit going to mush. Just like I deal with HR problems and budget problems and just like stuff that I wasn't that passionate about. And I sort of have always, I don't know, I've said this to myself over the years, and I've said it to other people in both real and sort of bullshit advice conversations, but I like building things. That's sort of when I'm happiest. I think there's no better career journey I've been on than when you try to build something and you find product market fit, and then you actually get to scale it and it grows. Like when that happened at Bleacher Report, it was the most fun I've ever had in my life. It was unbelievable to care about something that much and then to have it actually work. And so life's too short. I wanted to take another stab at doing that. And it was important to me to do it around something that I was really, really passionate about. Because I'm somebody, like, as a student, I was a good student, but not a great student. But I was a great student in subjects where I actually cared. And I was an okay student in subjects where I didn't care, but I just sort of had to do it to check the box. So I'm not somebody who's just going to go after a great business opportunity because I see, some attractive numbers on a spreadsheet. I need to do something that my heart and soul is in, more days than not. So that led me to really looking at the climate space, and I looked at it long enough to sort of conclude, I think there are going to be at least a couple of big digital businesses built that are sort of around climate in one way or another.
And I'm looking through companies you invest in. Are any of them, are you interested in investing in the climate space too? Because now I'm starting to see Saka has a fund. I haven't invested directly in a climate fund, but I'm getting pitched a few now finally. And I don't know enough about the sector because yours is the first idea I actually could relate to as a somewhat media person. So does that interest you in other ways? Have you invested in the space, or is this the first go around completely?
No, my wife and I have invested in climate companies directly, and also we're investors in a couple of climate funds, specifically seed stage funds in climate. And we've been doing that for at least a couple of years, maybe 3 or so years now. But you're right. Most of there's a shitload of VC money in climate right now, and the money has poured in, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. But most of it's in sort of deep tech. Mm-hmm. And I'm biased, but I think that sort of communications, information, advice, whatever you sort of want to call that space, a lot of people refer to it as storytelling, which I don't think is always sort of the best descriptor. But that part of the puzzle, I think, is incredibly important here. And there aren't as many funds that have been looking at that. So I'm trying to change that and prove that there is now a massive audience for people who are looking for climate content, and that there are pretty attractive businesses that can be built on top of significant audience and then significant engagement and community around all sorts of climate adjacent interests that people have. And one of the challenges we have, honestly, is staying focused, because there's just so much we could be doing.
Right. And there's just a lot of money for the right media company right now, because all these climate companies that get VC money, that's what I liked about it, are going to have to spend money to build awareness. In the end, it's like crypto companies, like, yeah, you can joke about it, but eventually they'll be buying ads on Google and Facebook to promote their domain. There's just not enough organic growth out there for anybody ever. Even Google eventually does TV ads. So now let's flash back to, you're probably 22. So were you in school when you started Bleacher Report?
Yeah, I came up with the idea in January of 2005. So I just started my second semester of my senior year. And then I started working on it basically right when I graduated. So yeah, I was 21 when we got going.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Notre Dame.
And so you have this idea. Venture was a bear market basically for tech. Web 2 hadn't really started. You were at the frontier of Web 2. Was it not knowing anything and just loving sports that was the trick at the beginning, or was it the way you could, create slave internship labor? What was the hack that worked? Because it just seems so simple in hindsight. But what was the hack?
You know what?
Because it is a very hard business.
You know what, Howard? I think we hired, at least by the time I left, I think we had hired over 100 people into Bleacher Report into full-time jobs that started as interns. So it is true that we had a lot of interns, but we basically, anybody who was good, we basically hired them. So say what you will about that.
But could you do it again today the same way?
With that playbook? Definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, no chance.
And what was it about? I mean, you love sports, but what was it that made it work at the beginning? What, like you said, you had that hockey stick moment. I love. Like, no. I've never had that. I've seen it in other companies, and I've been lucky to invest in it, but I haven't had hockey stick moments. So what does it feel like, and what was it?
So there were two reasons I started the company. One, I thought I was on a college campus, and I thought that people my age were really stuck with sort of our dads and granddads' sports sites. I thought that the ESPNs and Fox Sportses and AOL Fan House and Sports Illustrated and blah, blah, blah. I just thought they were really out of touch with my generation. I thought the digital sports content was really boring compared to what it could be. There was nothing that was sort of shareable. Social hadn't really happened yet, but there just needed to be something for younger people. And then I was an economics major, which leads to like how we really got going. And I was taking really cool econ electives at the time, and I just sort of saw the world through the lens of supply and demand, like everything. And it just really seemed to me like there were certain sports topics that were incredibly undercovered. So there was a shortage of supply of that content relative to demand. And then there were other topics that were really overcovered. And so that was really my business thesis, that, hey, like if we look at all this sports data, we'll find that certain leagues aren't getting enough coverage, or certain events, or certain teams. And we ended up, we tried to raise money at a time when content companies were viewed in very, very poor light, sort of like they are now. It's kind of come full circle. We got going at about the same time that the Huffington Post did. They had a little bit of an easier time raising money because they had a front person in Ariana Huffington. And then VCs looked at us and they're sort of like, yeah, you guys, we don't think you're idiots, but you're total nobodies. So this is this isn't going to be possible. And I remember one VC, somebody I like and respect a lot, saying, hey, you guys might be onto something here, but there are just too many competitors in your space. And there's just no way that you're ever going to get bigger than these incumbents. You've got a giant in ESPN and then listed off 12 other players and said, unless you have a top 5 audience in the space, you are literally worthless, because advertisers are only going to spend money with you if they have to. And that's the definition of have to, is top 5. So I got laser focused on audience growth, and I was able to build large, and in the beginning we had no money. Their blogging was very popular, so we were able to recruit bloggers, college newspaper writers, and other people to write about sports for free. I totally ripped off, I was a big Halo player, which was a very popular video game at the time, and they had this awesome status system for how you'd level up. Basically the more you played Halo, the better you did on the game, you'd get better and better status. So I ripped off their status and leveling system to do the same thing for sports writers, and people went crazy over it because they just kept writing because they wanted to move from having a status that was like writer to senior writer and then analyst to senior analyst and so on and so forth. And we had this incredible badges and leveling system. And we did get a lot of people to create a lot of content for free. And we were able to tap them into sort of we were very good at data. And we were able to basically tell them, hey, if you write about this, you're going to get a ton of audience. And we also helped them with other things, like we helped them get press credentials and sometimes interviews. And we helped where we could. But for the first 4 years of running Bleacher Report, we did not pay any writers. So it was essentially all a contributor model for 4 years. But, the supply and demand side, we were creating content about like the NFL draft year round because there was interest in it year round. And there was huge interest. Like the day after the NFL regular season ended, there would be millions of people searching for the term NFL draft order. Because if you were like a Raiders fan at the time and maybe you had the number 1 pick in the draft, that's when fans would want to know, okay, who are we going to get at quarterback who's going to turn this team around? So we were just sort of realists about how sports fans actually wanted to consume their sports versus sort of, the status quo that ESPN or others had fallen into because of, they had broadcast deals and they had to promote this league and that league to make various folks happy. We weren't beholden to any of that. We just tried to create the best experience we could for especially sports fans in their 20s and a little bit younger.
Fascinating. So it takes off. The world, was it Twitter that what was the platform that really helped you?
We really started with Google, and we got a lot of Google traffic. And then our big thing was actually newsletters. We created a newsletter for every major team and every major league. And when somebody would land on, say you landed on a Bleacher Report article about the Red Sox through Google, we were probably the first media company that prompted you to sign up for a newsletter. We had a newsletter pop up. Yeah. I think we came up with that first, and we got a lot of people to sign up for newsletters. And then we invested a ton of time into making sure those newsletters were awesome. So we at our height, the best performing newsletters were always SEC football newsletters because those are the most rabid fans in the United States. We had our Auburn and Alabama newsletter at times had 20,000 plus subscribers with average open rates of over 70%.
Whoa,
so it was
70.
So it was bananas because there was no competition, and we had a clear value proposition, which was that we would do the hard work for you, and we would curate any valuable article or information about that team, so you didn't have to go looking for all of it yourself. Because this was before Twitter took off. It was before anybody else was sort of thinking about content curation. And so we just did it really, really well, especially at a team level. And that was when Bleacher Report really started to become, I think it's when we hit our stride.
And so you stay on, I have a million questions, but I want to move this along. So I'm trying to think what I could be, how much did you end up raising in your seed round? I want to give entrepreneurs a perspective of what life was like pre-social networks.
The way we thought about it back then, we raised $100,000 seed round, and then we raised a $1.4 million.
Pay for some engineer's shoes today.
Oh yeah, no,
support. Yeah,
$100,000 seed round, 1.4 million Series A, which is
Series A at what val? Like 5 million, 10 million?
No, our pre-money on the Series A was 3 or 3.5.
Unbelievable. So you gave away like 50% of your company.
No. Maybe I'm sorry. But we
30%.
sold 30% in our Series A.
Yeah, and you're still. Okay, so this is why I want to have some context.
And it was fine. Everybody made a lot of money.
Fine. That's just what I'm trying to explain. I don't know where the script got lost. You were on the investor side, so I don't want to be the old guy whining, but I just want to give a little rant about this. You just said it yourself with no prompting. You did fine. You worked fucking hard.
We did great.
You probably don't like your VCs, but you do. But I'm just saying you probably don't. And you don't have to chime in. I don't know who they are. But what I'm saying is that's the way investing works. Adults, because you were an adult, you might not have known anything. You made a decision. You're going to work your ass off. You love what you did. You were passionate about what you did. You took a lot of no's. And when it happened, you're not looking back. You're saying you did fine. Today, so what was the transition like to a world today where kids want 20 pre and 2 years of runway before they even start? How do you, like, that's my problem. Because I was doing checks when you were doing it, and I thought the world was fantastic. And things to me are like completely bonkers right now. So how do you put that in context as a guy who's only 39?
I mean, as an investor the past few years, I also thought it was bonkers. And, I tried to put my jealousy issues aside a little bit because I
don't think it's jealousy. It's about being a professional and understanding the math. Why is math a jealousy question?
Well, I looked at deals, strictly that were more reasonable, and we didn't do any of those, super crazy inflated valuations unless the company really, really looked like it had huge potential and we just had to get in and, whatever. But, even when I raised money for this last company, I had a target for what I wanted the pre to be. And I didn't want to go over the target and I didn't want to go under the target. I wanted it to be a specific number because I wanted a good setup for the next round. And, I did not want to sell, 33% of the company from the onset. I thought I could do a little bit better than that, but I also didn't want to sell, 15% and have some crazy valuation that would then be hard to justify down the road. You see it in all sectors, but in media, and I don't want to call anybody out necessarily, but a bunch of our peer set in the media space raised money at massive valuations and have been, working their asses off.
Treading water for 100 years.
And so I'm very conscious of not I like optionality and I don't want to put myself in that or my team in that situation because it's not fair to anybody.
Yeah, I think I stock towards 2008. I raised 60 on 600K. Oh, what a schmuck. And, did I say that out loud, can it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I have Tourette's when I talk about myself. I'm only complaining about me being stupid, right? Like, there's not enough people on both sides explaining how math works. And you can make a lot of money on a multi-$100 million exit. And I think things are priced where you just don't have this optionality. I really worry about that. And it's not like I want to be negative. It's just like I think we've lost that perspective of what 200 or 100 million is, or 300 million is. Everything became about $1 billion. And that era's over. And it's just like Wile E. Coyote. It feels like everybody's spinning their wheels on a cliff.
But don't you think in 2 years, everybody will sort of within 18 months, everybody will get used to the new normal on that?
I hope. I mean, I think. I've already been waiting 14 months, so that would be like 32 months for me. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not an expert. Like, I thought I understood the markets coming from the public side to the private side. The world made sense to me in 2005 when I started making seed investments. I did Golf Now and LifeLock. So I wish I had been pitched your idea back in the day, but you were so young and I wasn't a professional investor. But I just thought, like I did Alley Insider at $6 million valuation, and that was high because Henry Blodgett was a name, even though he was barred from the industry. I mean, that felt high to me. I had originally offered Henry 1-on-2 by fax.
I'll just say he was very good at paying close attention to, or somebody on his team was at all the things we were doing. And they were very good at applying the lessons.
Yes. Fred used to get mad at him for changing of his headlines, because Fred used to be open about letting Henry taking his blog posts and posting them on Alley Insider, and Fred used to get mad, going, "You can't change my headline." So yeah, Henry was an expert, and that worked for me as an investor, and he built a great team, Frommer and Wiesenthal and just like a murderer's row of business writers. And I assume, did you launch any really famous writers at Bleacher Report?
Ooh, it depends. Really famous. There's a guy named Matt Miller who's now one of the most famous NFL draft experts. He's now with Todd McShay and Mel Kiper on ESPN. But he started as an unpaid contributor and just worked his butt off. And I don't know, he probably makes $1 million a year now. So we had a bunch of people start as unpaid contributors that went on and either for Bleacher Report or other publications made plenty of money. But Matt's probably the guy who started truly in the early days. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. So I have two kids, 24 and 23. You're 30. How old are your kids?
4 and 6.
Okay. 4 and 6. So when I grew up, you grew up where?
I grew up in San Jose, California.
San Jose. So when I grew up, as a Jewish person in Toronto, lawyer, doctor, accountant. So now that my kids are not lawyers, doctor, accountant, I feel like I did my job. Like that was an era of the past, right? You being an entrepreneur and seeing the world today with TikTok, and we'll get into TikTok and how a media company is built today quickly before we end. What is it that you want your kids to do?
Oh my gosh.
No, but I'm saying, I'm so happy because I feel like my son, who's a great golfer and is in the PGA program, and we were talking about 5-iron golf, which you're an investor in, and it's fun to know someone like you who's like hip with the brands, and my son's teaching me stuff, and my daughter's just unbelievable, but she's not being a professional. She's working in a healthcare company now. Worked at a startup before. What is a dad of a 4-year-old and 6-year-old worried about for their kids?
My attitude as a parent is I want my kids to get exposed to a bunch of different stuff and find something that they're passionate about. I don't really care what it is. Maybe there's some things that I care more about than others, but once they find something they're passionate about, I think we'll push them to excel at those things and put their heart into it. But right now, the only thing that really matters to me is that they find something that they care about and then work hard at it. Like what it is, I'm certainly not going to pressure my kids to be a doctor or a lawyer or go down a traditional path. I have too many friends who did that who are maybe not, the happiest people in the world. So I don't know. I'll tell you in a couple of years, but that's where my head is now.
Fascinating. If you were to do a sports start, you didn't want to. Is there did Athletic come to you as a startup, or did a VC put you in there as an advisor?
No, I got to know them. They were considering taking money from Time Warner Investments. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I think I earned their trust by telling them, this is when I was running Bleacher Report. I advised them against taking money from a strategic, and I said, "Hey, stay
at a seed stage."
No. This was later. I just said, stay neutral, and I think I earned their trust a little bit. And then when I left Bleacher Report, we had some meetings, and there were some clear things I could help them with. So that just worked out. Yeah, but if I was doing a sports startup right now, I think the answer is I wouldn't. I'm sure there'd be plenty of people who figure out how to make money on sports, but I have a hard time with sports because young people are just not consuming it the same way that they used to. Huh. And I think sports it's turned into an ARPU game where you've got, I sort of view it as the leagues have figured out that they're not going to make money on young people anymore. They're
because
making money.
Why? They don't watch TV?
If they're substituting away to YouTube, different social media. They're just
TikTok, Snap.
Yeah, there's so much more. There are a lot more options these days than there were when I was a kid, when you were a kid. So when I say it's an ARPU game, the sports leagues are essentially just finding different ways and down on the chain to raise prices, because you've got a couple generations of people, my generation on up, who are essentially addicted to sports. It's an inelastic good for them, or close enough. And so they'll sort of pay whatever. And it's just, I was really excited about, when I was in sports, about making sports feel as magical to younger people as they did to me when I was a kid. And I'm a little,
you're jaded.
I'm a little jaded at the moment, and I hope it changes over time, but
you've become the guy that passed on Bleacher Report.
Maybe I have, but
which is good. Like, you're not doing it. Like, there's one thing to just complain about, and another thing to switch topics, which is, luckily in finance and stocks, I haven't had to, because nothing's 20 years ago by, and the same shit's, I think there's a million ways to do stock twits again, so because the markets are always changing, whereas in sports, what's changing is the medium, not the game.
Yeah, and betting is changing.
Well, that's true.
But I don't love the betting business as much as the sports betting business as much as some people do.
But do you gamble? I don't gamble. Do you?
Yeah,
I can't follow it. It's so complicated.
I do. I have a little fund that I run with 4 college friends, and we make bets.
A 2 and 20 fund, or you just share the money?
I have proposed doing a 2 and 20 fund, because I've had people offer to put real amounts of money into the fund.
Wow!
And my friend, who's sort of like the commissioner of the fund, who's also a VC, has said, no fucking way. We're not going to do that.
Good decision.
And he's right. He's 100% right. But it would kind of be fun to have more money. But
it'd be fun, but stressful. It's over glorified, the 2 and 20.
But I don't want my day job and my purpose in life to be signing people up to bet on sports. I'd rather do something else.
I want to talk about golf at the end, but we're here. It's 2022, it's 2023 almost. And did you see TikTok did acquisitions? How did they do it? Or what is it about TikTok that you like or dislike, or is it going to be as relevant in 3 years as it is today?
Yeah,
2 years.
I mean, one thing that I saw and talked about years ago was just that, like, there needed to be something social around dance, like people who are great dancers, like basically having a great time, doing moves like that. I think I think there were signs on YouTube and other places that there was real potential there. And I think TikTok just created an optimal, creation plus consumption format to sort of, and they created a culture around people doing that. And there are lots of other things that happen on TikTok these days as well, but like,
it's unbelievable.
The dance thing to me, and there's just like the hot girl thing, which is a time, that's a time.
I end up with strategy. Young Filipino boys on anytime I spend.
Yeah, weird. Algorithms are pretty. I think they're pretty solid. Yeah, that's weird.
Customer support is not answering my request. So with TikTok, when will there be a platform for old people like me that just like sitting on a couch yelling at things, or does that exist?
Ooh, yeah, no,
that's Twitter.
That's a good one. I think that kind of is Twitter. I think that
no wonder I love Twitter.
I think the interesting thing with TikTok will be, and so the sort of instant scroll. Instagram just tried to rip off TikTok by doing Reels, and now it seems.
But my wife's using it, so
No. My point is, I think
it's working. I think everybody wants it to work like TikTok, but I think it's working on the people that were already addicted to Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, we'll see. They seem to be downplaying it a little bit, but I think the thing that we've seen early on with Instagram Reels is that our engagement on a reel is super low.
I'm watching my wife do it while we watch TV, and I can't believe she's doing two things. You can't do I can't listen to a podcast and do work. I can't watch a TV show, we're watching Bad Sisters yesterday, and she's on Reels the whole night. I'm like, are you watching? I go, you're missing everything. She doesn't know I'm watching.
I can't stand that.
How can you fucking do two things at once? Especially two forms of content. So women are different for sure, or she just didn't want to watch the show. So, yeah, so TikTok is the format right now?
I think TikTok is, sort of the center of, I don't know. It's like, I think the interesting things with TikTok will be to see, do people get sort of tired of the mindless scroll aspect of it? Where I think like YouTube, I think is a little bit more stable long term because they just have so much valuable content about so many different things. TikTok is definitely in the moment, but whether it ends up becoming a little fatty, and like a fad could last, 5 to 7 years, but
Sure.
is it going to be around in 15 years and have the same weight? I would probably bet no on that right now, unless they'll need to evolve a little bit.
They'll need to evolve. I do think it's harder to become Netflix if you're TikTok than it is for Netflix to buy their way down to TikTok. But that's a bet that I've made. I think it's easier. That's why I'm on Google and Netflix over, let's say, a TikTok at today's prices, because everybody's giving TikTok full value, and I think it's going to be hard for them to move in the other direction. They have search, and I think I just watched my sisters using it and talk about hashtag. I mean, my 6-year-old sister,
Yep.
I can't believe I'm saying I have a 6-year-old sister, but we're getting old, is on TikTok about recipes. So my mind has been blown in the last year about how things have shifted. But I want to have you back to talk about the cool down as you grow. How big is the company right now?
We're 9 people.
It's just starting.
Just starting in September, so we've been live for under 3 months. In September, we crossed 1 million unique visitors on web alone for the first time. So that happened faster than I thought it would. And we're figuring out all sorts of really cool data things, especially on Instagram. We now have like 12 or 13 case studies where we've gotten quite a few people to either sign up for services or to buy cleaner products. Where like there've actually been a bunch of people that have done it, and we're really early. So I am very encouraged by the start. I think we're going to be able to scale this, and we'll see what happens to the business long term. I don't know, but I think there's quite a bit of scale on the audience and engagement side, and I think people are looking for help in these areas because there are plenty of people who might not understand sort of the dynamic around carbon emissions, and that might be a little overly sophisticated. But I'll tell you, based on the data, there are a lot of people who feel guilty about throwing stuff away in the garbage, and they want to be less wasteful. And we're I think going to figure out how to help people with that. So yeah, I'm pumped so far. It's been good.
All right. So 2 last things. 2 of your investments that I don't know, I circled here. Behave Candy. What is that?
I didn't lead that one. It's a candy company. Yeah.
True candy, like not like healthy candy?
I think it's healthier. It's healthier candy, yeah.
Okay, so nothing fancy there. 5-iron golf. Fascinating. What made you invest in something that's like so physical and complicated? And I love the idea. So explain to people what 5-iron golf is. Yeah,
5-iron golf is it's a physical retail location where you go and hit golf balls into a simulator. So you can go there and play Pebble Beach. You can go there and play, Bighorn or whatever. They started off in New York City with a couple locations and then raised some money to start expanding. And the thing that they did that I thought was so clever is they figured out how to monetize the retail space for a huge percentage of the hours of the day. So they have people coming in mostly in cold weather cities or places where it's really expensive to play golf to practice in the mornings. Then they have people come in to take lessons. They have kids come in for group lessons, and they're making money sort of from 6 a.m. all the way on. They have leagues going on where players compete against people in leagues in other locations. And then you get to the 3 to 4 p.m. and on window where you have corporate events.
It's drunken animals.
Exactly. And you make all the money on liquor and stuff. But I loved the vibe that they created. And I love that
Chuck E. Cheese for golf.
Yeah. And it's something I think can scale really, really well. Again, any place where the weather isn't great in the winter, any place where somebody wants to go play golf for an hour because they don't have 5 hours to go play golf. And then they opened their first international location earlier this year in Singapore, because in Singapore it's really, really expensive to go play golf. And so I think there are different reasons why they can go into different markets, but they're at about 15 locations now. And the margins are good, and they're going to be able to scale. They also took a massive investment, or a very large investment, from Callaway in 20.
Who did Topgolf? That's smart.
Exactly. And the great thing for those guys around, at the risk of oversharing, is the great thing about COVID for somebody in that space that had money is they were able to lock in leases at really low prices. So they didn't have people coming in at the same rates at times, but they also, on the flip side, were able to get good long-term deals. So
are they at standalone or strip malls? Like, how big a place does it need?
The locations really vary. I think the largest location is in Chicago. They have 2 spots in Chicago. I think the bigger space is like 25,000 square feet. So it's
that's big.
And I think that one has, I may get this wrong. No. It has over 20 bays.
Oh, that's a big investment. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's rich. Okay. Very interesting. And they're a private company. Did you do the seed investment?
We did. I don't know if they called it their seed or Series A. I think it was the first time they took outside capital, but I can't remember. We invested in it years ago.
How did you find it? Or how did it come to you?
I found it through a friend of mine who was looking at the deal and thought that I'd be a good fit to
Was it the idea or the founders?
Both. The founder Jared is you sort of know a little bit.
Does he like golf?
A founder. I think he definitely likes golf, but he's not a golf junkie the way I am. I don't think he's I don't think he's playing in tournaments or anything. I think he's a more casual golfer. And they've done deals with Macklemore, and like they're tapping into
It makes me so bullish on golf. I've made I was Golf Now investor.
Yeah.
Which we sold early to Comcast. Like we just, I don't know. If I could do it over again, I wasn't running it. I was a large investor, and we shouldn't have sold it. But who knew? The world was different. It still controls the tee time space, but I am super bullish on golf. Not as a player. I don't love it. I can't get better anymore. But I feel like the fashion and tech and the way they're coming at it from less than 5 hours is explosive and the people that do play it have money. Generally, I'm pretty bullish on golf. So would you look at other golf investments?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So I've taken enough of your time. This has been super fun. I don't know if I missed some stuff, but we're appreciative of your time, and we'll follow on. The cool down is just like it's spelled, thecooldown.com.
Yeah,
correct?
Thecooldown.com, or find us on Instagram. We're launching a couple newsletters pretty soon here, and please check it out.
All right, buddy. Great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll tee them up in the next year.
Yeah, I'll come see you in Scottsdale at some point.
Come. You definitely have to come.
I will.
All right.
All right,
buddy.
Later.
Thanks, Dave. Cheers. Well, that was fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I mean, totally, you can tell, like, he has a good sense of humor, but, like, he's focused.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He really stood out to me, when you spend a long period of times with people on these type of trips.
Yep.
There's the people that stand out and don't, and he just found his whole character amusing and funny, and then so focused. And you can see it in his golf game. Like, you play golf a lot with me, and we all had our style, Hans and Morton, and we all had our own style.
Right.
And that was kind of how we lived our life. You could just tell. And like watching him play golf that one time, I knew, I was like, oh, God, this guy's like so intense. Like, it was 40-mile-an-hour winds, and he was grinding over every shot. And I was in survival mode as the old man. But we had a tight match until 18. I was just worn out. But
So you're saying he beat you?
Oh, yeah. But he was like, they were like 3 up with 3 to go. We were dormied, but then we won a couple. Like, they had a win on 17 or 18 to put it. And I was just like, and it was just like long. And I was just trying to get the ball in the hole type thing. And that works. Like, when you're just focused on surviving, it's not about your swing or whatever. It's just get the fucking ball in the hole. And we were close. Anyways, you are listening to Panic with Friends. Knut and Howard, we talk with entrepreneurs, traders, investors, trying to get a little step ahead. Like I said, I've been focused on what's coming ahead, and I think climate is love it or hate the way people are talking about it. It's affecting everybody, and that's a huge trend. And Dave is attacking it from a very broad media perspective and new angles of attack. So I think this is stuff that is appealing to more people than you think, already at 1 million uniques. So you can follow us at, obviously, my blog, howardlindzen.com, or Panic with Friends. Go to Google, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, search Panic with Friends or Howard Lindzen. Subscribe. You'll get one of these a week. Thanks, Knut. We'll see everybody next week.
Howard Lindzen is the founder and general partner at Social Leverage. All opinions expressed by Howard and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Social Leverage or StockTwits.